Hey friends, what if I told you there's an AI model that shows its work, like a math prodigy? Something that uses human-like reasoning and it shows you how it came up with the answer. Meet DeepSeek. These are AI models that reveal the reasoning process before giving answers. And today, we're going to build an app for the new R1 model. But here's the problem. Every chat interface out there treats AI responses like black box magic, right? Question, answer. Ask a question, get an answer. And that's it. But with DeepSeek models, it reasons through and it tries to think about the answer before it gives it to you. And it exposes the thought process that led to the answer. So in this video, I'll show you how to build a proper DeepSeek chat application that separates reasoning from answers and lets you peek under the hood of the AI to show you how it came up with it, and formats the responses beautifully. Shouldn't every AI explain its answers like some kind of cool professor? Well, that app will do this for you. We'll use Vue.js to build a web application and we'll run DeepSeek models with Ollama. This entire application can run on your laptop, of course, until you deploy it. Now, if you're curious about building AI applications or you want to build something specifically for DeepSeek and it's a new way of doing things, you've come to the right place. I'm Jeremy Morgan, and you're going to learn something about AI today. All right, so to start out, I'm using Visual Studio Code. I've got NPM installed. And we're going to just create a Vue application. Now, as a preface, I'm not a Vue expert. I just kind of use it to cobble things together to make things work. So if you are an expert Vue programmer, you might cringe at some of the stuff I do, but hopefully not. Anyways, let's jump in. I'm going to do npm create Vue at latest. And I'll bring this up a little bit here so we can look at it. The name of our project is going to be DeepSeek Chat. And yes, I want to add TypeScript. Yes, I want JSX. And yes, I would like a Vue router. I do not need state management for now. Let's throw in Vitest. Why not? And then add an end-to-end testing solution. Nah. But we can use ESLint for code quality and prettier. Awesome. Now it says, now run. We'll go cd DeepSeek Chat, npm install, and we'll have it install this default Vue application. Now while we're waiting, there's a couple of different ways to do this. So I could actually do this with just one HTML file. I could use Vue from a CDN and just pack all of the HTML and all of the JavaScript and everything into one single HTML file. Now, the reason I'm not doing that for this is because I'm going to use this later for other things, and I'm going to kind of expand on it. When you put everything into that single HTML file, it's very handy, it's very lean, very small, but it gets pretty tricky to expand if you want to start adding more features to that application or making it a real application. So that's why I'm starting out with a legitimate Vue app. This is suggesting to do npm run format. And as you can see, it's all unchanged. We will run format a few times just to kind of clean things up. And that's where the prettier comes in. And then, of course, it says npm run dev. And this will fire up our development server. We want to check this and make sure that it works. Bring this down. Okay. And it looks like it came up. It says you did it. You created a successful project with Vite and Vue 3. What's next? So this is our kind of default page that it scaffolds up. We're going to tear a lot of this stuff out of here. Another thing that I want to show you, we are going to be using Ollama locally on this machine to test, and we're going to use the DeepSeek models that are available. The R1 model here that's available from Ollama at this URL. And I'll probably start out with the 1.5 billion model, just so it's fast as we're developing, and then we can kind of step it up a little and see how it does with the larger models. Now, if I bring my terminal window over here, I can say Ollama list. And as we can see, I have 3 DeepSeek models available here. So the first one I'm going to run is this DeepSeek 1.5 billion model, and we'll kind of step it up from there as we go. So make sure you have Ollama installed. If you're following along with this like a tutorial, make sure you have Ollama installed, and we're going to start building this application. So your boss wants this application set up. We want a chat app where we can chat directly with the DeepSeek model. And the difference between DeepSeek models and other models, of course, is this think parameter where it shows the thought process. So it does reasoning, it shows the thought process, and it comes back. So our boss is like, we need to set up a chat where we can show that thought process and show the answer to the people's questions. So you start to build this view application, right? And we're going to wire this up to our Ollama API. But first, we've got to clean it up a little bit. So we'll go in here to source. We're going to delete all of these. We don't need those. So I'm going to remove all the style sheets. I'm going to remove the components because we're just going to create a single component for this. We'll go into views. We have home view and about view. We're going to get rid of about. We don't need that, but we'll keep the home view. And then this will kind of clean it up a little bit because we're going to get rid of a lot of that stuff. And a lot of these views have styles built into them and things like that. We're just going to use a single style sheet. And rather than spend 25 minutes watching me go through all the CSS styles, I'm just going to download a CSS file that I built a while ago. And so everything I build is going to be for that particular style sheet. I'll dump it in. It'll look pretty. Okay, so we've deleted out the stuff that we don't need. I need to create a component here. And this component, I'm going to call it chat interface.view. This is going to be the component. This is going to be the real meat and potatoes of this. I'm going to put in templating. I'm going to put in scripting for logic. Everything will be nearly self-contained here in this chat interface.view. That way we could take this and drop it into another view application somewhere else, right? Theoretically. Now, let's jump into our router here. And our router is a TypeScript file. We removed the about path, right? We only want one path, so I'm just going to delete that. And now in our router, you can see we have import home view from home view. And then we're assigning that home view, which is essentially a template, like it's a wrapper. You put headers and footers on it and stuff, and then you change the content in the middle, right? So this home view, we're just saying if it's the path is front slash, then the name is home, it's a home view, and we export that. Let's take a look at home view. Home view has the welcome. So not much here, right? So we're importing the welcome from the welcome.view. That no longer exists, but we do have our chat interface. So let's modify this. We're going to say import chat interface from components, chat interface.view. Boom. Now we're using our chat interface, which right now has nothing in it. So that's why down here in my terminal, you can see a bunch of wild errors. But it won't be for long. So another thing I want to import in here if we have, we have create router, create web history. Okay, so we do have that. For a minute, I thought I did not have that. So we have the home view, and then we modified chat interface.view, or we added that in. Now this is where the most of the work of our application is going to happen, right? The home view is pretty much what it is. Our app.view, let's make some changes to that. We don't need to import hello world from here. Now, I explained kind of how these views work. This is a header that is on that previous file. We actually don't need the header at all. We're just going to have this like as a plain chat window on the screen. So we can get rid of that. And I'm going to get rid of the style sheet because, like I said, I'm going to keep all the styles in one single style sheet just to make it simple. Now, I do understand the benefits of component scoped styling, like making a set of styles just for a component does make sense in a lot of cases. It just doesn't make sense in ours. So now we have router link, router view, which we don't actually need router link in here. So we could just say router view, and that's going to pass off our router view. Now back in chat interface.view. In here, we need to create a template. Okay, and to save you from watching me type, here we go. Now in here we have our chat container, right? And that chat container is going to be just a window that's going to have chat messages. There's going to be your messages on one side and the model's messages on the other side. And here we're using this before message index in messages. So we're using this message array to parse it out. And then we are switching the CSS a little bit based on the role, whether it is the assistant or the user, right? And so the user is going to go on one side, assistant's going to go on the other side. And we're going to do that with CSS. In here is our user input. We have two-way binding set up here with vModel so that we just type in this message and then on click, it's going to call a send message function. That send message function is going to contact the Ollama API. And again, the source code for this application is available here. So you can just download the source, start digging into it if you want. You can fork it, do whatever you want for it. Now, I'm going to add in some scripts here also. And again, we'll go and explain it so you don't have to see me type it. What this is going to do is it's going to add a user message. Then it's going to make an API call to our local DeepSeek instance. It's running on Ollama. It's going to add the AI response to the chat and hopefully handle some errors with a system message. And it should auto scroll to the latest message. So that's what next tick is for, by the way. We're using next tick so that it goes to the next message. And let's look at this. We have a messages array. We have a user input, messages container. These are all active, right? So whenever a change is made to any of these values, it can update the UI, and that's a view thing. It works great. Here, when we add a user message, we're just pushing a value into the array. We're making sure and saying it is user. And here we go. And then we clear the input after that. Then here you can see we're going to go fetch localhost 1134. That's our Ollama model /API/generate. Here we're going to send it some JSON. We're going to say we want this here, DeepSeek R1 1.5 billion model. We want to send our prompt, and streaming is false because we're just doing this on like a message by message basis. So we don't need streaming to stream every character. And then the AI response, we come in here and notice the role is assistant, where it was user up here. It's assistant down here, and then we put in the response content. Then we call next tick, scroll up, and here's where it catches error messages. So it'll say unable to get response from the model. Let's take a look at it, see what it looks like right now. It's not working at all, right? But it will here in a bit, and we will then style it up and make it work. So it says failed to access source, access main, SCSS. So here's a couple of things that we're going to do. In our assets, I'm going to name main.scss, and I do believe I changed the reference to that. And that reference would be in our main.ts. Oh, I did not. Okay, so in main.ts, I'm changing this to assets main SCSS. Now, the reason this won't work is because we need to install SAS, right? If we load this up, go to our ViteApp, we can say, did you try to install SAS embedded? And we did not. So once we install that, this should actually work and come up, and it will be horribly ugly and unstyled, but we can test to make sure it actually functions. So we'll install SAS-embedded. Here we go. Then we're going to do npm run dev once again. We'll go back to our page. And there we go. Now we've got ourselves a little chat window here. And we'll say, tell me a funny joke about Python. And as you can see, the message was created. And here we go. Here's the response back. All right, so I need to come up with a funny Python joke. Now notice here, the think tags. These are really important because this is the thought process of the model. This is the whole reason we're building this application, is because we want to handle this differently with the answer, which is why did the list go to the doctor? Because they were full of knots. Terrible joke. They always are. But now we have a functioning application. Sort of. It's not pretty. So let's go into our main SCSS. And like I said, I didn't want to show you 25 minutes of me fumbling around with CSS. I'm not very good at it, and it's not really that important, but here's what the CSS looks like. Again, it's available in a GitHub repo for this application. Basically, it's just a plain body. We have a chat container that we're setting here to 1200 pixels. We've got chat messages. We've got message, and then the user and assistant. You can see here, here's the difference. The user one is going to be margin left 20. Assistant will be margin right of 20. So basically they're going to go on each side. And we have some for the text area, some for the button, some neat colors in there. Let's see what it looks like now. That looks pretty nice, right? And of course I drug this down and expanded it. So here I can say, I am going on a hike. What should I bring? And you can see here, we have this light blue box. It's on the right-hand side, and some of this kind of goes with like a text message type of thing. And here in a second, here's our response. And here's a long drawn-out response with this think tag. Now, one thing that we've noticed, so now we've kicked this back. We've showed it to our boss, and she says, that's great. There's a problem here, though. I can't tell when it's working. Whenever I submit a question, it just sits there and kind of does nothing. It doesn't tell me if things are like happening or not. We need to add that in. So we'll do that. We want to add an indicator that things are happening, right? So let's put up a box that says thinking in the chat window so that we know something's happening behind the scenes. And then when the API comes back and we get our response back from Llama, we can get rid of that think, or we can populate it with this or something like that, just to kind of show the user that something is happening. So we can do that. What I'll do is use, it's called a message container. I'm going to use a Boolean called isThinking. That way we can say, when it is thinking, we'll do this. We'll put up this thinking box. And then when isThinking is false, then we'll go back and we'll put the message that came back in there. And this is going to happen in chatinterface.view. So I'm going to go to where we're declaring everything right up front here. And let's put in that Boolean. Is thinking equals ref false. And again, this is a reactive reference, right? So this means that Vue will track changes to this value, any changes to is thinking, messages container, user input, or messages. Any of these, if there's changes, it'll make updates to the UI when it changes based on what UI updates we want it to make. And the reason I'm passing in false is because I want it set to default. When the application starts up, it's not thinking. So we don't need the is thinking until we need it. Now we need to make some template changes here. We'll scroll up, and I'm going to put in a new message that's special, that's different. So right now we have this, and this iterates through the array of messages and displays them appropriately. We want to do something like this that says, if isThinking is true, then we need to pop up this class message thinking with this thinking message, right? And then when we hit send message, we want to make sure and disable the send button, and we want to disable it while things are thinking, right? So this is kind of one of those user interface things that we do. Like if we hit send, then we don't want to be able to hit the send button again. So we're going to disable this, and here's how we're going to do it. We're going to say disabled based on is thinking. So if is thinking is true, this button will be disabled. As soon as is thinking is false, when the API message comes back, then we're going to enable the button again. And you'll see how that works when we demonstrate it. All right, here's our Vue application. We'll say tell me a funny joke about Python. And I still don't see the thinking button. So I need to go back through my code and see thinking. Oh, there is also one more piece of code that I need to add in here. So here we have in our response, we have try, and the try sends off this request to our Ollama API. And then it catches it if we get an error, right? But we can add in a finally, and look at that. It looks like, so I am using tab 9 in here, and it looks like tab 9 guessed that I was going to set is thinking to false, which is true. Because basically what we're doing is we're saying, let's try to make an API call. If it crashes, we'll catch the error and we'll display the error. But after we're done with those two things, then finally, the last thing we're going to do is set is thinking to false. That way, it'll enable the button again, and it'll disappear that little thinking window. And we need to come up here. So I need to set it to true. I need to set is thinking to true. So let's go up here to clear input. And this in here will be after send message is sent. So inside the send message method, which is triggered by the button, here we're going to say is thinking value is true. That way it'll set it to is thinking, run through the API call, and then finally, after the API call is done, for better or worse, is thinking will be set back to false. Now there's another thing that I need to do here, and that is some CSS work, but let's just see right now what it looks like. Joke about Python. We'll just keep sending this query though, and so now we have a thinking indicator here where it says thinking, and we'll change that into an actual chat message. And as we sit here, it is clearly thinking, and it might be hung. And it's not. Okay. So now thinking is gone, and it's replaced with this. Let's add in some style sheets to make that look a little bit smoother. So we'll go to main CSS here, and we're going to add in a style. We're going to add in something to indicate that the button is disabled. And again, I'm not going to make you watch me type through all the CSS, but we can see thinking here. It's going to have its own background color. We can change this to whatever. Something like this, I guess, would be kind of cool. And this one's going to be set with margin right of 20%, font style italic. And then this is the button disabled style. So we want to disable that button and make it so the user can see that it's disabled just by looking at it. Now let's see what the application looks like. We'll run this one again. Tell me a funny joke about Python. Notice now, down here, the button is disabled. And it said thinking up there. We'll just do this again. Tell me a funny joke about Python. There's the thinking right there. And then the thinking will disappear and be replaced with the answer. And, you know, an animation or something might be kind of cool there too. So, great. You've done awesome. Now you kick this back to the boss and say, hey, check it out. Now, you know, we've got this thing to where it says thinking when it's thinking, so you can see that something's happening. This looks great. And then the boss says, okay, awesome. When I ask this a question, why does it have think at the beginning of it? And where's the answer? Why do I have to scroll all the way down to try to find what the answer is? This is a huge, giant mess. Great. So what we need to do, and this is part of what makes the DeepSeek models different, right, is that reasoning step. It does a reasoning step, then it gives you an answer. So the traditional question answer thing doesn't really work that great. We want to be able to show that is thinking, just like the DeepSeek model, web model. If you go to the DeepSeek web model, it does this. We want to separate the thought process from the answer. That way, we can just see the answer, and if we really care, we can look at the thought process and how it arrived at that answer. So this requires some hacking around in the code. So we'll go in here to our chat interface again. And if we look at our messages, right here, messages value push, we have role of user here. This is going to push things into the messages when you add a user message. Down here, we have the assistant message. So we need to change this assistant message a little bit because this is where we're taking the output from OLLAMA and we're just stuffing it into the messages. It does some CSS styling and kind of makes it look cool, right? Okay, so we know that this isn't going to work. This message value push. We're going to have to dump in some logic to parse those think tags. Okay, and here's what the AI response looks like now. And so now we're going to do a think match. And I named it think match because it obviously just matches the think tags. So everything, basically this think match will be everything that is after the think tag and before the closing think tag. So everything between those think tags will be in think match. So if think match exists, now sometimes those think tags don't have anything in them. So that's why I'm doing this. If it exists, then we're going to push a new kind of message, and that's called assistant-think. So we had the user message, we had the assistant message. Now we have assistant-think, which means it's the thinking process of the assistant. And we're just taking that and trimming it. Then we're going to add the remaining content as the main response. So this is very similar to what we had before. And this one, we're basically saying the remaining content, everything after those think tags, is going to be back in that assistant again, which is main content. If there are no think tags, then just add the response as is. And this is the way we were adding it before. So if there are no think tags, just dump it all in there. This should make it so that we have a separate response. Now, up at the top, we've got to do a little bit different thing with our template. So before here, we have this message content. Well, now we want to put in the thinking, right? We have the is thinking stuff, but we want to remove this message content because now it's going to be a little bit different for each one. And we'll dump in some of this code. Now, if the message role is assistant think, then we're going to add this thinking plus the content, right? And we're just calling it thinking. We could call it reasoning or chain of thought or whatever. Reasoning. And then the message content. So not that much of a change, but we just kind of want to prepend this with something a little different. And finally, we need to add styles. So we have this assistant-think, which is a new type of message. We need to add that into our style sheet. So we'll put it down here. And this one is just going to be called assistant-think. It's got a different background color. We could change fonts and things like that if we want, but let's just take a look and see what it looks like. And see if this is something that our boss will be happy with. Tell me a funny joke about Python. There we go. We have our thinking indicator again. And here we go. Check it out. Now we have our reasoning. Okay, so I need to come up with a funny joke that involves Python. Blah, 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 blah. I think this works as a joke. And then it dumps the answer. If you don't have a package, maybe it's in Editor Tools, etc. This isn't, they might import only NumPy instead. This is a terrible joke, but who cares? So basically, this is the two different things. Now, we could change the colors of this. Let's change the colors around a little bit to kind of indicate it's something different, right? So the background color, what if we change it to the opposite? Like we make the background color something fairly dark, and then we make the font color or something kind of white. Like this. See if this looks a little bit better. Yeah, that does kind of look a little bit better. So we send this off to the boss and say, hey, check it out. Check out what we did. So since we have this reasoning step in the models now our application shows you the reasoning, shows you the answer. So you get both of them. So no matter what question you ask, you say, why is the sky blue? You know, if it uses any kind of reasoning to figure out why the sky is blue, it'll show you. In this case, it does not. Which we should make that so it dies out completely. And it says this color of sky is blue due to a combination of factors, etc. Great. Then the boss says, okay. So she sits down to try it and says, help me come up with a marketing plan to bring Pogs back to the public. We'll stress this thing and make it really think, right? So she's looking at it and says, yeah, we've got the thinking indicator. I like that. That's great. Here's my marketing plan for Pogs to return to the public. It's an educational platform based on personal development. I was thinking the little bottle cap plastic things, but that's fine. And then she says, oh, cool. Here's the reasoning. What exactly is Pogs? I don't know much about it. She's like, but maybe I just want to hide this, right? So she said, let's make this so that we can hide this so it doesn't show up unless we want to see it. Let's make it so it gives back the answer, but if people are really curious to the thought process, then they could press a little button and show the thought process. But other than that, just make it hidden to where you can't see it. Okay, well, that is something that we can do. And here's how we'll do it. Okay, so we want to show and hide this thought process. More importantly, we want to hide the process, only show it when we want to see it. So in our message, let's change this a little bit. Up here in chat interface.view in our template, we have this, which says reasoning, assistant think. This is the one that we care about the most. We want to add it in a new template there instead, because this template is going to give us a little bit more power than this p tag does. Okay, now let's take a look at this. This is a lot more stuff, right? In here we have a template, and we have a VIF, right? So we have a model here that says if message roles assistant think. Then we're going to have a think header, which has a click on it. It says toggle thought, right? And the message visibility, hide and show. So we have this button that says thought process, right? And we could even say see thought process or something. See thought process. And what this will do is toggle back and forth. So we want to toggle like show it, then hide it, etc. Not a big deal. Then we need to go down and add just a little bit of script here. So let's go down here and we'll say message visibility. And here, this message visibility value is right here. And it's going to show whether this value is going to dictate whether we're showing the thought process or hiding the thought process. All based on that little value, which I can't find now, and I'm scrolling around like a maniac. Okay, it's going to be somewhere in here. Where did I put message visibility? There it is. And we're going to put a quick little function in here, toggle thought. And what toggle thought does is whenever you change true to false, anytime you call toggle thought, which we're calling it with the button, it's going to switch it to the opposite of whatever it is. So if we click toggle thought and its message visibility is true, it'll set it to false. If message visibility is false, it'll set it to true every time we call this with our little button up here. So let's test it out and see if it works. I don't know why I refresh it, just probably by habit. We don't really need to, but tell me a funny joke about Python. Now it's doing thinking. Show thought process, hide process. So it's that easy. So we have, oh, I see. I should have just left it as thought process instead of hide C thought process, show C thought process. Let's change that to just thought process, because I forgot about that other one. There we go. Show thought process, hide thought process. So now our boss goes back to it again. We submit it and say, hey, check it out. Got this finished in 5 minutes. And she's like, okay, cool. So tell me a funny joke about Python. Now we can see we've got the little indicator that it's thinking and that it's doing something, which is awesome. And now she could see, why did the programmer name their variable hello? Because it's how we call functions in Python. And then there's a joke explanation and etc. And she's like, well, if I'm really curious, I can hit this button and say, oh, wow, they put a lot of thought into this terrible Python joke. But there we go. The ticket's closed. However, she goes in here and says, write an article about how to connect to a database in Python, right? Or we'll be specific, MySQL database in Python. And she's going through, she's kind of thinking about writing this thing, and comes up. And she says, all right, cool. Here's the stuff, but why does this look so terrible? This is all in Markdown, right? Well, that's because the output is in Markdown. So what we need to do is we need to format that output, make it look pretty. That's pretty much the last thing that we said we're going to do, right? We said we're going to make this thing show thought process and an answer, and we're going to make it look pretty. So let's do that. Now to do this, it's fairly easy. And another thing that we want to do here is in our main CSS, we have this thinking, right? And we have an assistant think in here, background color, margin right. We want to put in a think header and the toggle functionality. So basically our assistant think will look like this. Now with a little bit of styling, it's going to look even better. Tell me a funny joke about Python. And there we go. This looks a little bit better. So I made some CSS modifications, and I think this kind of looks better because we have that show thought process. It's kind of out of the way, but you can show it. Okay. And I just wanted to put that in there before we move on to the next thing, which is making the Markdown look better. So we can see that the output's in markdown format. One of the things that we want to do is we want to use something called the marked library. It's going to convert markdown into HTML for us. We're going to have to add a function to format a message that will use that marked library. And then we're going to have to change our template a little bit, and it'll work. So we'll shut this down. We haven't shut it down for a while. And here we're just going to do npm install marked. Awesome. And now marked is installed. So we can fire up our server again. And we'll go in here into chat interface.view again, right? This is where we spent most of our time, because like I said, this is the meat and potatoes of the application is all pretty much in this chat interface. So one thing we need to do is go up to our message content here. And we've got visibility, etc., for all of that thinking part of it. But this is our actual just message content. The only thing that we want to do here is we want to change this up just a little bit. And I'll show you how. Instead of using this template action, we're going to say v-html format message.content. So this doesn't exist yet, but, and we're going to make this a div instead of a p tag. So we're going to say div, etc. We're going to close this. We're going to turn this into divs instead of p tags because we're going to push this out in HTML. Now what we're doing here, instead of just dropping the message content directly in, we're going to run message content through format message, right? And then we're going to dump that into the div as HTML, and it's going to be interpreted by the browser as HTML instead of Markdown, so it should look pretty and look nice. Now, of course, down in the script, we need to make that happen. One of the things we need to do here is import marked from marked. So we need to import that library, save it, and I'm going to give myself a little more space before these. And then we'll add that message format function. So we've got toggle thought, we've got all kinds of different functions down here. So here's a new one, and we're going to call this one format message, like we indicated above. Format message. And this, of course, is going to take content in as an input parameter. And then we are going to say return marked content, but we want to add in some extra parameters in here. We're going to say breaks is true, and that's for converting line breaks to HTML break tags. We want to do that. Then we want GitHub flavored markdown just in case. So we say GFM is true. That's for GitHub flavored markdown. These two together should do what we need to do. So this is pretty simple. We are, rather than trying to write our own code and do something wild with this markdown, we're just going to use this marked library. And again, it's just going to pass it into format message. That should be a capital M. Into format message down here. That's going to pass it into marked. We're going to keep those line breaks. We're going to use GitHub flavored markdown, and then we're going to pass it back in. Now, one of the things we need to do, because it's spitting back this stuff as HTML, we need to make some changes to our messages class. And I can tell the formatting is getting silly with this, so I'm going to just say npm run format real quick. And this should format things a little bit better. I'm going to say npm run dev again. Okay, so let's go into our message selector. We'll find it here. right here. This is what our message looks like right now. We're going to add a bunch of stuff into that. And again, I'm not going to make you sit through my typing of all of it. We're going to add some stuff inside of message so that it has a margin. It has block quotes. It treats P a certain way. It treats code a certain way. And basically all of this so that it styles it and makes it look nice. So instead of just dumping in markdown, which is what we did before, now we're turning it into HTML and we're doing a little bit of styling on that HTML. Let's see what it looks like. It is broken. Missing semicolon. Where did it say this line was? And if we look here, we're starting to break a bunch of stuff here, so that's fine. Missing semicolon, line 11. There shouldn't be any semicolons there. Marked. And I know where I'm missing the semicolon. I'll bet you it's in that new method that I just made down here. Ah, there we go. I believe I need a semicolon there to make this work. Let's try restarting it. And nope. For message, index and messages. And I have no idea why I put content format message, but it's supposed to be a constant. Pretty sure it'll run now. Let's see. Okay. And I have managed to break something really good. And I'm going to leave this in here just to show you that everybody makes mistakes, myself included, and I'm going to find out why this is happening. So we have an unexpected token here. Data v inspector. So up here, we've got some kind of unexpected token going on. Index, class equals message, message role. Open this. Expected message dash content, thinking. And let's look at our errors in here. It looks like way up here. Inspector, source components, chat interface view, 4.7. Okay, and that is going to be the extra semicolon that I put in a while ago. If we go over here, that should not be there. Let's see what else we've got. Now it looks like it's fixed. So we'll do a test. A joke about Python. Thinking, and now we can see, oh wow, it's formatted. Why don't you just say Python? The joke plays on the faithful use of the word Python, which is both a programming language and associated with ease in everyday speech. Okay, sure. Then we have our thought process here where it says thinking. And if we say something like, write a short article about hiking in Oregon, we can do this, and this should produce a nice looking, pretty little article here. So we send this back to the boss, and she says, all right, awesome, you did it. You killed it. Great job. You get a raise. You're promoted to VP, etc. All of the good things. But basically, we've done everything here that we want to do, right? We're handling a user message, creating a user message, making an API call to a DeepSeek instance. We're adding our AI response. We're separating the think portion of it, like our thought process here. We're separating that from the output. So we're showing the output. Optionally, you can see the thinking process. We've got it formatted really nicely here in Markdown, and everything is great. Now, there's more stuff that I want to do with this application, but for the purposes of this YouTube video, this is exactly what I wanted to build. Now, as a reminder, you can get the source code here for this application, and you can take it and use it, fork it off, do something else, whatever you'd like. Basically, this is a ready-to-go Vue application. All you have to do is run Ollama on your machine, load in that model. Some future things I might want to do with this. I will make it so that you can have a consistent conversation history. So right now, every time you send a message to this model, it is starting over. There's no context. There's no conversation piece. You're just asking a question and it's spitting it back like it's the first time it talked to you. So for future YouTube videos, I want to add in some kind of functionality to where we can keep a little bit of a history and keep a session with a context and real conversation going, which will need to be more complex than it is right now. Some other things I may want to do is maybe a model selector that will go in and look and see what models you have, and you can choose between which ones you want. But basically, obviously, this is meant for one of these DeepSeek models. So right now, if I want to change this, I have to go dig through the code and say, oh, where did I make that API call? Oh, I made it right here. Okay, let's change this to, 7 billion parameter model. We'll save it. Now you can see it's updating. Now I say, okay, tell me a funny joke about Python. Oh, and there's our error. So at least we tested the error response. Let's see why I got an error. Well, that would be because I do not have this 7 billion parameter model loaded. So it was probably good that I did that because I actually forgot to test the error response that we put in. And we did put in our catch, right, for that. If we get an error, we need to pop up an error with a little red screen. So we were able to test that. Well, let's instead use this 32 billion parameter model. And we know this one will be slower, but should give better answers, right? So we can say, write an article about connecting to a MySQL database with Rust. And now we've got our thinking. And that's another thing I might do in a future version is I'll put some kind of spiral animation, something, maybe a little bouncing ball or something other than just thinking, because even this is kind of, with this long period, it's kind of static. All right, and here's our result. And yeah, that looks good. That looks great. Connecting to a MySQL database with Rust. Set up your environment. Establishing a connection. And this is awesome. Everything's formatted. It looks beautiful. Your boss is happy. If you want to see the thought process, you can click on it. Shows the thought process it went through. And everything is great. So we're done here. And again, at this URL, you can download it and try it out for yourself. If you've been following along, then we just built our first app to talk to DeepSeek. And this is pretty cool. Okay, you've made it this far. Congratulations. You've now built a full stack AI chat application using Vue.js and Ollama. Now, this just shows that you can build applications that integrate with local AI models to build cool applications, specifically these new DeepSeek models. right? And we learned that Vue's reactivity system excels for real-time UIs. And Ollama provides easy local mode access. Now this is great, and all of this is pretty easy when you get the hang of it. So thank you for following along. And if you like stuff like this, subscribe to my channel. Smash that subscribe button like it owes you money. I'm on a mission to help software developers learn AI without a PhD. Thank you for watching.